We're traveling the same path along the starboard side that the iceberg took. The top of the berg would have been to our left, showering ice onto the deck of the Titanic. Survivors' accounts tell us that some of the passengers were picking up the ice and playing with it. Some even put it in their drinks. We're coming up on the number 3 cargo hold. Deep down there is where the third-class passengers were. Those poor souls were trapped and never had a chance.
The larger the ship is, the cheaper passengers can be taken across the Atlantic. There was such a demand for third-class passengers, immigrants, to travel from the old world to the new world, to America. Steamship companies were just overwhelmed. They just couldn't keep pace with it. And it's not the first class and the second class passengers that were really the primary reason why these big ships were built. It was the third class, it was the immigrants. And of course, once they were in America and they got employment, they were able then to act as almost as a bridgehead to bring other members of the family across. The steamship companies were well aware of this. So they treated third-class passengers extremely well, even though they were only one-way passengers. Remember, there's no return fare here. Important to treat them very, very well. That's why they had up to 4 meals a day. That's why they had stewards serving them at table. That's why they didn't have to bring their own bed linen or china and knives and forks. It was all laid on for them. And each passenger would be given a little menu card. And on the back of that menu card was a postcard. They would be invited to send back that little postcard, one side a postcard, one side a menu, back to their relatives living in Russia or Scandinavia or wherever. And they could prove that they'd had a good time traveling from Europe to America by the White Star Line.
The third-class passengers within the social structure of 1912 very often were exactly that, third class. They were predominantly, not exclusively, but predominantly, members of the working class. And they and their forebears had spent generation after generation being told what to do, when to do it, where to go, by the people who the society had placed over them. It cost many of them their lives. There were locked barriers between the third-class areas of the ship and the rest of the vessel. Those barriers were not put up by the White Star Line to keep the third-class passengers out and away from the lifeboats. Those barriers were required by American immigration laws.
Unfortunately, we don't know very much about the behavior of the crew towards the third-class passengers on board the Titanic because principally there were very few survivors that worked in that class. But what we do know is that a great many of the third-class passengers were kept below decks.
In all of the confusion that existed among the Titanic's officers and crew the night that she went down, no one made certain that those gates and barricades were unlocked and opened, allowed the third-class passengers access to the boats and the upper decks. Some of them were open, some of them weren't, but nobody made sure that all of them were. There was no policy of discrimination against third class. What happened was they were forgotten about.